very significant changes at the school education level. Unlike the 1986 National Education Policy that pushed for a 10+2 structure, the National Education Policy 2020 proposes for a 5+3+3+4. And it focuses on vocational education, it focuses on experiential learning and critical thinking at the level of school education. Now, in this context, I would like to invite Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar, Founding Vice Chancellor, OP Jindal Global University, a leading educationist in India, who has been able to drive the imagination of higher education in India, from the establishment of the Jindal Global Law School in 2009 to setting up of 12 schools as part of OP Jindal Global University today in 2022, and making OP Jindal Global University one of the top globally recognized institutions in the world. So with that, I would like to invite Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar to address the gathering here and talk.
The aspiration that is a deeply embedded aspiration in India, which is to build world-class universities. This is not something that emerged very recently. In fact, the Indian history and ancient India's evolution saw the development of Nalanda, Takshashila, Vallabhi and Vikramshila type institutions, which in their own time had contributed to the rich civilizational heritage of India. They were truly global universities, they were multidisciplinary institutions, they had faculty and students from other parts of the world coming into the Indian subcontinent and experiencing a truly world-class education. Today, we have 75 years of Indian independence. As we celebrate the 75th year of Indian independence, we have numerous challenges that are facing the higher education sector. We have a huge challenge with regard to the demographic situation in our country. The fact remains that India has 850 million people who are less than 35 years of age. At the dawn of Indian independence, the life expectancy in India was approximately 35, and today it is 71. We also have this extraordinary aspiration among young people to receive high quality education, which can be truly transformative, which essentially means that we need to have more institutions and we need to have better quality. Now, the tragedy is the gross enrollment ratio, despite 75 years of institutional evolution and development, remains hovering around 25%, and we need to educate more people. There are 1,000 universities and 45,000 colleges in India. Despite the expansion of Indian higher education sector to nearly 35 million students who are part of that sector, we still have major challenges of a large number of young people wanting to get into the education sector. And so, I want to start by saying that the first and most important challenge that we have before us is, how do we balance quality and quantity? We need to have more institutions, but the natural tendency when we expand the sector is we end up compromising on quality, and we need to focus on excellence. And that's one major objective that the National Education Policy was trying to achieve and respond to, and which is connected to our aspiration to build world-class universities. The second major challenge that the National Education Policy was trying to achieve or respond to is that, how do we build research universities? How do we benchmark Indian universities among the best in the world? As many of you, as distinguished members of the media fraternity, know that consistently for many years, several prime ministers, including our current prime minister, but also the previous prime minister, the former president, Pranab Mukherjee, all of them have lamented about the fact that not a single Indian university is among the top 100 in the world. Very few Indian universities are among the top 200 in the world. And in fact, when the major rankings organizations such as the QS ranks Indian universities, you will be surprised to know that out of the 1,000 Indian universities which are there, only 22 of them end up being featured among the 1,000 universities in the world. There are approximately 40,000 universities in the world and 1,000 in India. but only 22 of Indian universities end up being ranked among the top 1,000 in the world. That essentially means that we have a major challenge with regard to quality, which I talked about. And one of the reasons why we have not been able to be featured in the rankings is that relatively poor quality and impact of research and scholarship and publications emerging out of Indian universities. And so what the national education policy was trying to address is that how do we build a research ecosystem? How do we create a culture of research among our institutions? How do we ensure that our faculty members are driven by motivation to create knowledge across different disciplines and contribute to research through publications, especially in Scopus Index and peer-reviewed journals? This aspiration to balance between focus on teaching on the one hand and contributing research was another dichotomy that the national education policy was trying to address. And that's the second major challenge the NEP was trying to address. The third major aspect of the NEP is another important challenge that we face in India, which is the dichotomy and the dilemma between public and private institutions. At the dawn of independence, we ended up creating great public institutions, including IITs and central universities and state public universities. But since the late 80s and the early 90s, Indian higher education moved towards expansion in privatization of higher education. We saw the emergence of private higher education institutions. In fact, the IT revolution that we have seen across many parts of South India, including cities like Chennai and Bengaluru and Hyderabad and other parts of India, owes a lot to the emergence of engineering colleges, which ended up creating a fertile ground for the expansion of the IT sector. Dramatic changes happened with regard to the emergence of the private sector in relation to education. But also, it's important to mention that not all private sector education was focusing on quality and excellence. A lot of mediocrity and deeply embedded unethical practices were brought into the privatization of education, because of which academic standards were compromised. So today we have a situation where 70% of Indian higher education institutions are in the private sector. And more than 70% of students in Indian higher education are also studying in private higher education institutions, adding to the affiliated colleges and also the private universities, the deemed universities, and other such institutions. So there has been a tectonic shift in the world of higher education, in which both in terms of the number of higher education institutions and the number of students studying in higher education institutions, the private sector dominates and dominates quite significantly. This essentially means, from a public policy standpoint, we need to understand how we are going to be regulating this entire sector. And so the balancing act is to recognize the role of the private sector, but also to recognize the importance of corporate philanthropy and other types of empowerment, because the state has consistently reduced its role, including its ability to fund and contribute to resource for the university system. So OP Jindal Global University is an institution of eminence established by the Government of India. We are located in Sonipat, Haryana. The reason we are here in Chennai is to promote the idea of building world-class universities in India, and how the national education policy will have a profound impact on the future of higher education. We strongly believe that the need for promoting excellence in higher education ought to become the mantra for all institutions across the country. The state of Tamil Nadu and Chennai had made significant progress in early investment with regard to school, primary, secondary and higher education. The growth and development of engineering colleges in this state has contributed to a large extent the development of IT revolution across South India. The next big evolution that has to happen in the state of Tamil Nadu is to focus on building world-class universities. I don't see any reason why, if students and graduates of Indian universities can achieve the highest level of excellence after having gone to United States and other parts of the world, why can't we create such institutions in India? Why can't we have world-class universities in India? For a long time, this was a challenge that enabled many institutions to aspire, but only few could actually achieve. Today, the national education policy has provided a comprehensive institutional framework that can help Indian institutions to achieve that excellence. What we intend to do is to create a framework of how we can actually achieve this. The policy document that we have released today, which is about a 10-point growth and reform plan for Indian universities, where we have articulated and identified what are the 10 important things that we need to do so that we can not only build world-class universities in India, but also enable, empower, facilitate, and actually imagine a world-class education within existing Indian higher education institutions. The demographic dividend that we are all proud of, which is 850 million people who are less than 35 years of age, this demographic dividend may end up becoming a demographic disaster if you don't focus on quality, because a large number of educated youth who are unemployed and unemployable could become a nightmare for any democracy. We need to be vigilant about the implications of unemployment, and particularly educated unemployment, and that's why we need to focus on quality and excellence. We also need to recognize that the future of Indian society and global society will depend upon how we are able to harness new ideas in the fields of science and technology, in medicine, in liberal arts, in humanities, in social sciences, in law, in business management. These ideas need to emerge out of Indian universities. India has to play a civilizational leadership role that we had played over 2000 years ago when Nalanda, Takshashila, Vallabhi, Vikramshila and other type of institutions across the country saw the evolution of education. Long before Oxford, which is 800 years old, long before Bologna, which is 900 years old, long before Harvard, Yale and Stanford, India had such institutions, and we need to retrace that history when it comes to quality and excellence. I want to end by saying that the national education policy has laid the foundation and provided a pathway for building world-class universities. It is now up to all of us, and all of us as educators, as well as every constituency in India, including in the state of Tamil Nadu, to recognize this role and responsibility that we have, which will have huge implications for public policy and governance of the future. Thank you very much.